Buenas tardes a todas y a todos, tanto los que nos acompañáis hoy aquí en el aula magna de nuestra sede del Palacio de Altamira, como a los que nos seguís en streaming desde la plataforma online. Soy Beatriz Amán, soy la directora de la Design School de IED Madrid y simplemente quiero daros la bienvenida a este evento que presentamos en colaboración la Fundación Loewe y el IED Madrid. En este sentido, agradecer a la Fundación Loewe y a su presidenta, Sheila Loewe, esta oportunidad que hoy vamos a disfrutar todos. Sheila, bienvenida. Welcome.
Buenas tardes otra vez a todos. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us. As Beatriz said, I'm Sheila Loewe, the president of the Loewe Foundation, and we are very happy to be here today with all of us here. And with Beatriz told me more than 500 people connected via online. So also a special hello to all of them. We have today two finalists from last edition of the Loewe Foundation Craft Prize. We have Jiyong Lee, our glass artist, and Peter Bauhuis, our metal artist. And it's going to be moderated by Anatxu Zabalbeascoa, who is the president of the jury of the Loewe Foundation Craft Prize. So one of the most important, this was the most important, and after this, I wanted to say a thank you to the Instituto Europeo de Diseño for hosting us, not only for hosting us, for the collaboration that we started some months, years ago, and today it's real, it began already last year. And we really thank you, and we are happy to give awareness and to support together all this craft magic that we have here and in the world. So thank you very, very much.
So hello, the third hello to everyone and to everyone at home or wherever you are connecting from. It feels very nice to be finally here, back here, to be able to have this conversation live and to be able to talk further about craft and to learn more from craft makers. We will have a very small, very short lecture or conference, very, very short. Peter Bauhuis is going to be talking on the first place about his work as a metal artist, as he was a finalist, as Sheila Loewe said, on the last edition of the Loewe Craft Prize, and he's also worked all his life as a jeweler. But he was represented in the last show as a metal artist. He's based in Munich, and he will be talking to you about what he does, how he does, and hopefully why he does it. Afterwards, we will hear a very short introduction also from Jiyong Lee from Korea, although he's been teaching in the States, so he's based in Illinois, in the Southern Illinois University. He's been teaching there for 16 years. And he is a glass artist and a glass teacher. And he will be talking also about, how he started and how he developed to reach basically the work that he presented the last edition of the prize. Afterwards, we will have maybe a conversation. Otherwise, it depends on how it goes. Otherwise, it could be an interview, a double interview. And finally, you will be invited to ask them questions. Our idea and our hope is to share with you what we value in contemporary craft, what it is, what it has to do with art, with design, and how it can change our lives. So please, Peter Bauhuis, may you start?
Okay. Thank you. My name is Peter Bauhuis. I'm living in Munich. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. I'm trying to do this little lecture standing without a computer in front of me, so let's see. My work is quite diverse. You probably know the work which I was presenting at the last Loewe Craft Prize, which are vessel objects, not very big, but my work is a bit more complex, and I don't know if we come to a development in 5 or 4 minutes, but at least I can show you a broad field of what I'm doing, as I see my work being partly jewelry, partly making vessel works, but also trying to tell stories with mostly metal objects, and that can lead to books or films or whatever comes into my mind. And I will show you many images, but we have to run through my work. One thing that combines the work is the material metal. I'm always tempted, challenged by casting. So a lot of my work is actually first done in wax, and then it's cast in metal. And I'm using many alloys, as I showed. I will show to you. But I want to start with a very small and a very early work, and that's a work called Fusel, which is a lint, poussière en français, a tiny little thing that if you wear it as a jewelry, somebody will discover, will come to you and maybe too close to you, a strange thing for a pandemic situation, and wants to react. And this is, they are cast tiny pieces of dirt and lint that are cast in silver or gold, and then connected with a little needle you don't see, so you can wear it and somebody can come. So what I like about this work is that it is so small, but still is forcing people to react. And I think that's the greatest thing you can reach as a craftsperson or an artist, if you make something that physically draws people to react to it. But vessels are a big part of my work. Being trained as a jeweler, I was first doing an apprenticeship at a school in Hanau in Germany. Before, after a while of working as a craftsman, I studied at the art academy. And in the time of the academy, I started doing vessels, starting very small, being a jeweler. But very soon I discovered I need the space to explore what happens on the surface. So I don't work on the surface after casting, unless many other silversmiths have the main work on polishing the surface. I try to do nothing. I just get rid of the plaster which I need for the process, and the only thing is it gets waxed so that the surface can stay. So these objects are all cast with 2 alloys that come together and give the pieces the amazing color that comes out of the oxidations of the metals. So different alloys have different colors, and if they mix, there are even more colors. So this is silver, sterling silver, pure silver and sterling silver coming together. Yes, Antonio, you probably know one of these pieces. It's the first one which I cast was done in London, and it ended up in the V&A. And these are his 6 friends. So I developed more alloys that I can use, working with brass, silver, copper, and all the permutations of these alloys. And one of the more recent work is what you've seen before. And the most recent work was done this year in Switzerland, in the Kunstgießerei, the art foundry. We made pieces of bigger scale, which is like that big, up to 20 kilos, where again 2 alloys came together. It's quite a challenge it's getting more and more difficult if the size gets bigger. But my work is also different. So one work I need to show you, you have to get through that, is the Gallium Treasure von Obertraun. And there I was presenting a metal treasure in an archaeological museum. People could see about 60 pieces of jewelry mainly that are all made in a matte gray alloy, and people could read it is gallium. So the melting point of gallium is under 30 degrees. So imagine a piece of jewelry next to the body, it would melt from the body. So I confronted the audience in that situation of an archaeological museum with this idea of a non-wearable jewelry, and everything was done in the jewelry in the museum style. You could see the pieces. There was a documentary. There was a guidebook, and everything was kind of unsatisfying. Why would a culture make something unwearable? And so it was of course a reflection on how we look at things. Whom do we believe? What do we think is the right thing? And also trying to understand what we see in a showcase and dealing with that situation. But most people left with more questions than they got answers. Another project, a very new project, is a jewelry project, Fly, and inspired by another project. I was always working with the Venus shape of the prehistoric Venuses, and I discovered it actually also looks like a fly. So I made a swarm of brooches, again with all different colors. Resulting from the oxidations of the metals, but this was embedded in a little very personal research on flies, and I was collecting things about flies, technical, scientific knowledge. Did you know they have like a gear? They can have a gear change, so there are little bones which in the flies, so they can change, and that's why they're so fast. And I discovered quite many interesting things also, again, about approach. This Dutch or Belgium painting from the 18th century. She's having this fly, but not as a vanitas idea, but with the idea of remembering a soft touch, or maybe imagining a soft touch by somebody. And this resulted in an exhibition in Munich, and also in a little booklet, which I enjoy a lot. So, yeah, there are many more stories. I think my 4 minutes are already over. On my homepage, which is a little bit corrupted on that screen, it's artfree.de, or Instagram. You'll find my connection, and there's also a book I made, and if there is, because Anatxu was asking about a development and a newer, or maybe come to that, but what I said before, I enjoy very much to also tell things that go along with the work I do in metal. So my metal work is like the condensation point for maybe a discourse or a talk or for stories. And that's it. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Peter, for telling us the story of how you try to tell stories with your metal work. And thank you for showing us in such a short time, such a plural work. You know, we will later talk about how you've been growing in scale, because this is very recent and you just showed it to us, and also the imprint that, you know, the record of how the procedure of how you make things, and you need to show that and why you need to do that. So we will be talking about that. In the meantime, we'll also like to know Jiyong Lee's work. You have perhaps 6, 7 minutes, 8, whatever you need to explain to all of us. Thank you.
Stand here. So my name is Jiyong Lee. and I am originally from South Korea. I was born in 1971, and I finished my undergraduate school in Korea, and then I went to the States for my graduate school at Rochester Institute of Technology, where I studied glass. After I finished my graduate school, I taught at RIT for 4 years. And after that, in 2005, I moved to Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, where I have been teaching 16 years. So I know a lot of people are familiar with the glass blowing, but that's not what I usually do. I usually work with cold working with all the cold cutting and grinding process. But a couple times a year, I have to work in the hot shop with other glass blowers or the people who work with hot glass. Around 2000, well, in 2000, I got married, and my wife was pregnant, and 2001, my son was born. My dad is a medical doctor, and I grew up with all the information in the biology and the science. And also, I enjoyed the biology classes when I was in school. But after I came to the States, and when my wife was pregnant, I kind of interested in revisiting the biology textbook and learn all the languages and all the vocabularies in English. So I actually went to the university bookstore. I pick up a used biology textbook and just going through, all the images, and so I could read some parts. And I at that time, these, how the life starts, became very interesting. It's real because my son is coming up soon. And then with dealing with the material, the new material, glass, some of these, the images you see in the biology textbook are interesting in a different way. And especially this one is embryo of fruit fly. And there's a segment in that embryo. And this actually became the inspiration for my first segmentation piece. At this time, it was 2002. I graduated from school. I was teaching part-time. I was trying to figure out my next series that I like to work with. So the piece you're looking at is all clear, and you see the darker black part on the left side, but that's because there's the same gray layers overlaid, and they appears darker on the left side. But when you walk around, you can change. And the actual glass doesn't have any color, so it's a clear glass. Only the cut line has the color. So as the viewer walk around, the color gets shifted. With thinking about the embryo, I start to think about the identity, and I know it doesn't really show very clearly, but in this work, each layer has the thumbprint. So because the thumbprint often associated with our, thinking about the identity of the individual. Another way to think about the identity was thinking about where I went through. In this case, in this work, there's a different layers, have a different addresses. My family moved multiple times, and it shows a different layers, different locations of my childhood, and that probably formed my character or personality or me. When I think about everything so far is microscopic, so it's thinking micro. And the image on the top left, that's a microscopic image of a leaf. And then you see the image of the map image of London. And then that's a street. And to me, the microscopic image of leaf is very much like the road and street of the city, how they carry the resources. But also the map image underneath is the sewer system of the London, which, the resource move, or people move on ground and the underground, and the waste goes back out. So it shows a trail of, where the resource and waste moves. So with, thinking about, micro and the macro, I got a little more freedom of cutting the segments in the glass block. So the most work you see, this is kind of technical information, but the glass itself doesn't have any color. I often use optic glass blocks that comes from Japan, Germany. This is another one. I call this one, there's the title, but in my studio, I call missing block series. So what it is about is the cube is perfect. It's a unit. And I think about the cell as a unit of our body. But the reason I don't have that corner is because we're always missing something. That I'm different from my parents. There's some mutation happen, and my son is different from me and my wife. So with thinking about the cube, perfect cube, having all the corners and 6 surface, that makes it perfect. But I always think that we're kind of not perfect. We always have some imperfection. So, but with having that imperfection or a difference, we're still beautiful. So I try to create something beautiful, something that we can enjoy without having that corner. And also the things can be very complex. With a few work like this, I was thinking about the cell being the building block of our body. Keep thinking about this. You saw my series started the black, and then monochromatic with some color, and then colorful. And then I want to go back to monochromatic because that's more like me. But I didn't want to go back to black, so I was looking into going white. So it actually clear glass with a white, but I can control the density of the white. So it can be translucent white or more opaque white. From thinking about our body, I kind of expanded my interest into looking into water, other microcosm. So this is a green cosmarium. It's a freshwater algae. And a lot of times, I'm not with the material that I use. I'm very limited. I can use a saw and only can cut straight line. But the whole thing. Think about the organism. I try to make this puzzle. So I start with a clear blank that doesn't have any cut, and then I cut them into separate sections and regrind all the parts and put them together with the colored adhesive, and then regrind the outside. So make it look like nothing happened, but it's in there. The reason I really like this translucent surface is because it diffuses the light, and also to me it provides a mysteriousness that the way I understand. That's my. I'm not trained as a scientist. I'm interested in this science, but because I don't fully know, I don't want to make it clear. When I work with a clear glass and seeing through, that talks to me more about I can see through, I clearly know things. But with a translucency, I can somewhat see it, but unclear. With my understanding of science, I'm only good maybe to read National Geographic or the Science magazine. I can only go far. But I, being in the university, sometimes I talk to the scientists, the professors, and they get to show me. So on this one was in the Loewe Foundation Craft Prize. Is that 2021 or 22?
21. 21 edition.
2021, yeah. So the title of this piece is mitosis. So that, when the cell divides into two, that's a mitosis process.
How big is it?
How big? I think they're about 30, little over 30 centimeter. Yeah. So I've been teaching in this university altogether 20 years. At SIU, I've been teaching 16th year. I'm on 17th year. I have wonderful graduate students from all around the world. Erika Kobayashi is a graduate student who's graduating this spring. This is her work from a couple of years ago. It's about her frustration of learning English. Thinking about taking TOEFL tests and her that strong image of being in the stage with that yellow number 2 pencil.
Yeah.
This is Kip Paulson. She's actually teaching in Germany the Build the Work right now. Build the Work, and her the piece on the left has became was like most successful work. It got really well known. Long story short, that each element in the helmet is from the yarn pulling the spool pattern that talks about the woman's domestic work, but then that became almost invisible armor and became a strong individual as a individual woman person. Another graduate student who graduated a few years ago, Catherine Ritaki, who lives in New Zealand now. At the time, she was a young mother who were struggling to feed her baby and also working as a graduate student. So you see the nipple stamped all over, but it's a pink and blown. And in the back side of the piece, there's a mirror. So if you look at the mirror, look at the piece and look for the gap between the nipple, then you can see the viewer can see themselves. So they can finding herself through the breastfeeding or the thing being mother. So it was a beautiful piece. This is Jiyong Lee, who graduated in 2012, who's now a professor at Tsinghua University in Beijing, and he was talking about the fragility of the self, the individual. So these are only a few examples of the students, the former student. Ho Seok-yun, also from South Korea, who graduated last year. Yes. And he was interested in talking about the conspicuous consumption. So the people spend money to show off, their whatever. So this this is a photography work, and the plastic bag, have this luxurious looking the glass goblets that showing off. And also the other one on the left is have all this, marble table and all this glass become a beast, or in his show it was a beast, but it became like a monster and actually start becoming something that attacks the people around the table. So thank you, and this is my sort of the contact information, but I'm sure you can find it from somewhere else as well. Thanks.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Jiyong Lee. It was super interesting how you linked your own life, your own, and even the students' life and wishes to their work. And it was twice as interesting because you actually spoke of your work completely controlled and geometrical as having an organic inspiration in a cell. And basically, you built a perfectly geometrical portrait of yourself. Now, I would like to start this conversation talking about identity. How much of you is in your work, and why is it important? And is it something that can be understood by others, or just for you, you need it to work? Both of you, Peter as well, afterwards.
So I guess I think about, I think I have a luxury of having time of thinking myself as a, the university professor in a rural area, not in the big city or the busy city. And especially working with the graduate students, I have to figure out the students, the interest, and I think that's the most important thing for me, to work with the students. So that's something that I always ask my student: what are you interested in? What are you interested in? What do you want to do? And I have to encourage them to try different things while they're in school. After they graduate, there's a chance that they can actually, their real life will be busy, and they can, they will have other duties. But being in the school, while they're in the school, we, as a head of the program, I set up the schedules, and I often see that me being scaffolding, like building, the building, but I'm a temporary structure. The student have to be the building. I'm not the building. I'm always, when the building goes up, I'm the structure have to come off. So I like to support it. That's how I think about my relationship with a student. And yeah.
Yes, but why do you think, I'll go back to this identity thing, why do you think it's important that they leave some of their, whatever, worry, the things that worry them, some of them in the work? What does it transmit to the work? Does it make it more like stronger? How does it affect the work if you are in there?
I feel like that's the, at the time, the most students I work with, they're relatively younger, and that's most truthful, something they know very well. So I think at the time, around that time, I think it's one of the way they can approach their creativity.
It becomes more truthful.
Yeah.
Would you agree, Peter?
I think I was sick when they did identity in the school. I find I can't relate to this question. I think I do what, I mean, it's probably also different if you teach, and the way you teach, and what is the subject. But being an artist, I don't have the feeling that I want to express my identity through my work.
Or something that worries you. Sometimes with a student, it wasn't really her identity, it was her frustration that you mentioned. So something that really belongs to you. And you don't have that feeling, Peter?
No. Well, I think it will, if on the long hand, it will show in the work. What makes me as an artist, if you look at my work, for sure that will happen. But I don't take this as the essence of my work, or as the base for, I'm always so tired, I make a piece about tiredness. that is not how I think. I'm very curious at looking at the world, and I discover many strange things, and then I want to try this, and then I want to expand. They tell me you should never combine silver and brass, and then what happens if I cast silver and brass together? It is a reacting, but it's often more to
experiment, to try.
Not, yeah, to try out, but also, a bit cheeky to try out something else, or to see where are boundaries. What can I do, even if they tell me you're not allowed to?
But you are not looking in yourself.
Well,
You're
I'm
experimenting.
looking in myself enough, but I don't think that is what I need
Okay, you want to
to
translate it.
show
Yeah.
in the work.
Yeah. Why is it so important for you to show the process? To have somehow, you mentioned that you don't finish all the surface. Why is it so important for you to show that?
Well, in this work that was also presented here, it is because it's about the process. Yeah. So if you would finish, if you start sandpapering it, you would get a blank, awkward-looking piece. It wouldn't make sense. This work is about the process. Other work, I just take the beauty out of the color. Other work, like the gallium work,
More conceptual even.
it's much more conceptually. It's really going beyond that. So yeah, I'm not always showing the process, even if I'm using the same or a similar process.
No, obviously, I mean, you
lot.
show a very plural work.
Yeah.
And perhaps the question would be, why have you needed to experiment so much? Because it's as if you open different doors rather than follow one single path. Why did you need to do that or to try that?
See, there are these single things, and I don't follow a single path, but I also don't believe really in this idea of a path. And I found this idea of a network much more pleasing. And one of my shows was called Armillaria. And armillaria is a mushroom, and they have this enormous underground network. And what we call normally a mushroom is the fruit, like pops up here and it pops up there, and then there's a Fusel, and then there's an archaeological work, and then there's a book, and then there's a film. But it's this network that interests me, and then maybe somebody can come and analyze, or try it, and then probably you discover what is this network, what makes it. And it's a lot about how. What interests me is how do we conceive work? How do we look at pieces? How do we talk about them? And that's all this context that interests me, without that I really want to write a text. How do we look at a piece?
Also, you mentioned, you led us, and I mean, you showed us a little bit, of your work and of your lives as well. But I didn't quite get why, on the first place, you were both interested in your own craft. Why glass out of all materials, out of all crafts, and why metal or jewelry?
I started my undergraduate in ceramics, and then I think it goes back to my personality. I think I wanted something more precise, that
More precise.
Without thinking about like a shrinkage of 15-20%, depends on how wet the clay is. So when I tried glass, I was there's some like fulfillment with something I can cut carefully, and it was almost like a woodworking. They would measure twice and cut once, and I was able to have that
Control.
feel of the accomplishment and
Yes,
control.
and of control,
Yeah.
because actually you mentioned that you don't blow.
I
You
don't-
cut
yeah,
and
yeah,
build.
yeah, yeah.
You need to have everything very much controlled. And when you don't know something, you mentioned in your lecture that you need to communicate it, but making it translucent.
And I think I also, when I work in the cold shop, that's what we call cold shop, because the most process done in the room cold temperature. I can work by myself. In the hot shop, we have to have a team of people. Like, it depends on the size of the work. 4 or 5 people have to work together. When I visited like a big glass, the summer workshop schools like Lino Tagliapietra and other big famous glass artists working with a team of 5, 6 people, to me, just thinking about the future of what I'm going to do, that looked like running a small company. Then, I'm relying on people's finger movement. That's kind of too much. And I know there are a lot of people like that, and it's really important, and it's a fundamental part of the glass community. But for me, I enjoy the time that I can spend time by myself, and I can plan, and working with other people a few times a year. I think that's exciting, but I also like to have my own time in the studio. That's something I liked in ceramic studio.
It's more predictable. It's somehow you have a way of controlling it. And Peter, sorry.
Yes. Why am I a metal man? Well, I'm a trained jeweler, and I haven't.
But why did you decide to become a trained jeweler?
Oh yeah, there's developments. Well, actually, there's a biographical story, which is, I know. I'm actually, if we would be in the good old times, I would be a watchmaker, as my father and grandfather have been watchmakers. So there was also the wish of the family, don't you want to be a watchmaker? But I never wanted to be a watchmaker. But then suddenly there was the opportunity to learn jeweler at a school, which I liked in Hanau. And so I went there and I enjoyed it. And I had the idea, well, you can still study whatever you want after doing the apprenticeship, but not thinking about art or craft. But then I liked it, and then I knew how to work with it, so it developed from that.
So somehow it comes from a family tradition that you kind of questioned.
Yeah, there's a little reaction, but then, yeah.
And in your case, there were no one in your family.
I was the first artist in the family.
Yeah. But he's a very scientific artist as well. I would like to ask you, it's almost a cliche question, but it was asked to me yesterday by one of the members of the expert panels. What do you think craft with artistic ambition should have or try or do to become relevant to a young audience? The cliche question is how to make craft sexy, which is, as a journalist, I hate this, but this was a question that was asked. So I'll translate. How to make it relevant to a young audience? Why? That's why I kept asking you, because, we are in a school. So what is attractive today?
I think like making work with the interest of something that from our environment and surrounding and some topics or subject from this time, I think that's relevant. I think if someone trying to, do something that is already done in, centuries ago, and they're keep making replica of those, because they're interested in technique, that's not relevant. That some object from 15th century was relevant to that time. That's why we have those objects in the museum, and that reflects the time, the living at that time.
So it needs to reflect the time, in your opinion.
I think that's a one way to do it, and I'm sure there are people who are doing the historians, and studying the, how things done in centuries ago. I think that's their interest. But if our young generations are interested in doing some craft art design work that is relevant to our time, I think we can just make work on that, have an interest on our music, art, anything about our politics or social issues. I think that's all relevant to our time.
Any thoughts on your side, Peter?
Well, I think it's about the connections. Well, as you say, yeah, I would again like to see it as a network. But there's also another point which wasn't pointed out, even not in our discussions, and that is the enormous quality of material. So craftspeople are the experts for material, and it's somehow not very modern or it's not very accepted in the moment, but there's already a rethinking material in the arts, in the architecture, everywhere you find this. And that's one of the virtues of craftspeople, because they really know about the materials and they know how to work with it. And then it can be a very old tradition that it helps, as well as very new technology, and that is what I think. I would hope that would make it sexy in a way. I'm very reluctant with having this idea of a strategy to make it sexy.
No,
because
absolutely not.
This goes into the wrong direction.
No, it was
the
how
authenticity.
They could be
Authenticity of making things that relate to our time in a way, and then that. Well, every artist has to find her or his own way to do that.
And it's also relevant, as you say, because in a time that we are witnessing how many things dematerialize on the one hand, and on the other hand, you were showing one of the works of your students criticizing consumerism.
Yeah.
Craft is somehow against consumerism because it takes so long to produce it, because it becomes special just because of how difficult and how unique it is. Do you see that, or?
Oh yeah, I think quite. I mean, one of the things that when I was doing ceramics, it's kind of childish, but when I was a ceramics student, I really liked the idea of making something for people, something affordable. But then the teachers who were teaching at the time, as I see them, as their career goes up, then the price of their work there goes up, and it's not for people anymore. It's for top 1%. So it's like, are we still making things for people? Like, and we're always making things. Our studio is filled with all this material, and it's like, but is that there's some materialistic aspect of our idea of making these things. So I think it's a complex. Another thing that I would like to think about with when I'm here is that we always, it seemed like that art craft design, there's no hard line the way I see. It's very organic.
So you see bridges rather than boundaries. You see there are no limits in between disciplines.
Not even the bridges. We're just organic. It's already mixed. I think that defining the line, that's our historian's job. I think that we just need to make what we like. I think leave that. What's design? Design is a, I don't know, maybe there's some people in the audience that disagree, but design is a process. Or there's art, creativity. There's something art in the design. There's a craft, always making things. Now with after industrialization, these jobs are separated. But these are all the thinking process that used to go all together. And we still have, there's a design process, and there's an art part, and there's a making part. When that separated, the craft became kind of dirty word. There's a second grade, and the art became the top. But I think I think we should maybe stop the artists, especially, not to waste too much time and thinking about those defining the difference, or trying to separate ourselves from the world.
Yeah, and I see Peter is agreeing with it. But one question, and it will be my final question before we open to your questions. One question we always like to ask to the people that we invite is when and how to find when something has a work of craft has artistic ambition. Instead of being popular craft, how does something go from being popular craft to holding artistic ambition? How would you describe it? It's not important as well, as you were just mentioning in here? Because your work is definitely not popular craft.
We were talking about exactly. We were talking about these expressions, and we did not know what actually is asked. And I think craft is then interesting if it goes somehow beyond what it is, some magic or
Art,
thinking or relation. I don't know what is popular craft, but maybe that's
or traditional craft.
Yes, but I think you explained it very nicely. Well, you need the handwork to do something, and this is now. And if the technique comes from former time, it's great. If it's added with another technique, then it's great as well.
See how in art history there were the arts, art à métier, like your job, and then art, singular art. And art was sublime, and the arts were meant to be useful art. And the 20th century questioned all that. That's why I would like to keep asking these questions, precisely because there are several answers. Okay.
Maybe it's a very 20th century question.
Yeah. 21st even.
Well, no. That's what I said. I was saying maybe it's a 20th century question.
Okay. Yeah. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask Peter or Hyeyoung any question whatsoever? Take this opportunity.
So question for Mr. Jiyong. Just wanted to know, seeing your work and just appreciating how organic everything is, I just wanted to know if your workspace and the places you present are as sterile as your cuts, or are they as organic as your shapes?
I think I
Would you like?
didn't understand.
Could you please repeat your question?
I just wanted, seeing everything you do is very organic, the shapes specifically. I just wanted to know if the places you present, we've seen just everything's very sterile, very white. The lighting is very controlled. Have you ever considered presenting in somewhere more organic? Have you ever done so?
More organic.
I tried photographing work in the nature, but with all the photograph you saw in my presentation was photographed by me.
The leaf.
The
leaf.
And I just didn't have a very successful photo shoot on the outdoor or other setup. And also the work that I make is not meant to be presented outside. It's not, I think it's not, the outdoor is really harsh environment for the glass structure because, if you think about the sunlight and, the temperature changes. So I was always thinking about the indoor, and also in a way, I am not really outdoor person. It's like always I'm kind of lab, like, being inside. So, and also, seeing the microscopic images on the microscope, that's always in some kind of controlled laboratory environment. So I know it's all ideas came from kind of organic life, but I always fantasized with a laboratory environment.
Does that answer your question? Because yes, okay, perfect. Hyeyoung, why you need to have everything so controlled would go beyond this conversation.
That's my
We are not
personality.
into yes. So we will leave it for today. Yes.
Yeah.
Any other question from yes? There is a microphone, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry to focus on you so much. Two things actually. The way that you carve glass, the way you cut it and control it, and that is almost as if you were a sculptor. And the sort of perfection of those silhouettes, which are just breathtaking.
Thank you.
So, do you ever think about yourself as a sculptor? And then I want to say one more thing once you've.
Yeah. So I just when I started to call myself as a sculptor, it's like I'm like, am I denying being a craft person, or it's like, so I just introduced myself as a maker. It's like I love the one thing I am very proud is being a maker, object maker. I have not been really strong. I didn't really have the established series of installation ideas, or I have some ideas, but seem like my career is going with object. That's just something that people recognize from what I do. So the object maker, and there's a sculpting part in glass technique. There's a hot sculpting, and there's a hot bubble sculpting. So there's a sculpting is the word is used as a description of some techniques. So I do carving. Yes. So it's a sculptor. It's not utilitarian. My work is not utilitarian. So yeah.
If I may ask one more question. The photographs you do of your own work.
Yeah.
Which is sort of often seem to be almost monochrome and stuff. I mean, they hark back to sort of Bauhuis photography. I mean, the photographs of the works in themselves are so beautiful. And is that something that you're also very conscious of, the way that you're photographing your work? That sort of almost you've created a second work of art in a sense, just a photograph of it.
I think I kind of have that aesthetics, that I like monochromatic. I don't see myself as a very colorful person, although I have something. Sometimes people say it's like colorful. I have some work that is colorful, but I made the colorful pieces and thinking about a different aspect of our lives. We have to deal with many different things. So I made a colorful piece, but when I truly think about myself, I think monochromatic. Yeah.
Sorry, may I ask you a question? How does it change your perception of his work when he would have said he's a sculptor?
It doesn't. I suppose it's sort of understanding the way that you're using materials, and that sort of control. So it's not about whether it's sculpture or not, although the techniques are very close to sculpture, as if you're carving, alabaster or something, because it's that translucence that you get in those perfect edges. But it's also the control of light, that you're controlling light both in the object itself, but also when you view the object, and as we view it through that photograph. Beautiful.
Thank you.
But I love your work as well.
Well, no, that's not the problem. I'm very envious of the transparency. If there was a way to make metal transparent.
Do we have a final question from the audience? Anything else you would like to know or ask, at least? a couple. We have time for 2 more, perhaps.
This is a question for Peter. You were talking about the experimentation. It's important in your work. And I would like to know what's the next step, the next crazy thing that you're thinking to do, to experiment, to challenge the technique.
And perhaps you could talk
Suggestions?
also about the size. At least tell us why you decided you needed to grow in scale.
It was, it was. See, maybe one part of my work is also to accept challenges and to see opportunities. And I had a big show in Switzerland. It was prominent. It was not a 1-person, but 3-person show in Winterthur in the Gewerbe Museum, which is a very nice museum. And they are really people that care about materials. And they are associated with that foundry. So that was actually, I mean, it was all made up by myself. It was not a suggestion. So I said, but is it a possibility, I said, to make something with the foundry for the museum? And there were open doors for that. And then having the chance to work with people, and it was like you were also mentioning, it was really like, like you worked with other people. That was a very interesting experience. Unfortunately, work in Switzerland is so expensive that I don't think I came to that point where I was 100% satisfied. We got great results, but actually now the work would start. And that is maybe also answer to your question. I don't know if I will be able to do that very soon, but I would like to find out in that dimension what is still a good dimension. I also found out that if it's, maybe that's because I'm a jeweler, the relation to the body is very important, and I found it easier to relate to something that at least I can carry than to work which is so big that you have to reflect the space situation more than the relation to the body. So that in the moment I have the feeling that there's a certain size where I lose interest because it's more about the space than it's about the relation to myself or to anybody who is looking at it or trying to carry it around or whatever.
Any final question? Yes, Patty.
Well, this is for both of you. What would you recommend to a person or a student who is interested in developing a career as a contemporary artisan? How can they start, or how can they be trained?
I think there are many different ways. I think it depends on what they want to do after they, if the students are undergraduate students, they can look into going to graduate school. Although I usually recommend the undergrad student go either work for some other artists or have some other experience, and then when they start to find some interest and they are able to their portfolio actually can display some of their interests and not only all the assignments from the teachers, then maybe they're ready for the graduate school and then develop their own work. And there are plenty competitions and workshops and residencies. There's a lot of things that they can find out through their peers or the teachers. And so after that, at some point there will have gallery connections and that work with the galleries, and then the galleries, the way I think the gallery is also the partner. That's a 50% with the commission. It's a business partner, so you have to work with those people.
I can't add a lot. I think it was a very
the gallery.
Yeah, I mean, also people are very different. I mean, it's very, very important to get informed, to be very curious and find out, wow, is that interesting? Then go. And if you want to do an internship and you don't get a reaction, I mean, make yourself interesting. Maybe don't give up. Be friendly. Be curious. Yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, I'd like to thank Peter Bauhuis and Jiyong Lee for sharing your work, your thoughts, even your advice, your relationship to your work. And I feel that for someone who normally works on their own studio, it's very important for us that you open yourselves to us and you explain to us all these things.
Yeah,
Okay, so thank you as well to the Instituto Europeo del Design, and thank you all for paying so much attention to contemporary craft. Thank you.
Thank you.